My wife cheated on me with her boss, then after betraying me, she stole $250, $0 from our joint account to fund her affair. Now she's filing for divorce, claiming I'm financially abusive, and I just found out she secretly transferred my family's $1.2 million estate into her name. I never thought my life would turn into this kind of nightmare, but here I am, trying to make sense of everything that's happened. It all started with little signs, things I brushed off at first. My wife had always been a bit moody, but lately she'd become downright distant, avoiding my gaze and brushing off my questions with some excuse about work stress. I didn't exactly suspect anything at first. I mean, who does? But then small things started adding up. Her phone was always locked, even when she was in the shower or cooking dinner. She'd leave her laptop open late at night, which was unusual because she was never into technology like that. And then there was the money, something I'd never paid much attention to before, but suddenly I noticed her spending sprees and strange transfers from our joint account. One night, I was scrolling through our bank statements trying to get a handle on our finances because she'd been asking for more money for work trips and client dinners, which she insisted she needed for her job. I saw a transfer of $250, $0 that I didn't recognize. My heart stopped. I immediately looked into it, and that's when I found out she'd stolen that money from our account to fund her affair with her boss, Mark. I couldn't believe it. Had been cheating on me with Mark for months, I was sure of it now. The signs were there. Late nights, her secretive behavior, the way she'd get defensive when I asked about her schedule. But this was a whole other level. I confronted her the next day. I was furious, trembling with rage and betrayal. I threw the bank statement on the table and asked her how she could do this to us. Her eyes widened and she started lying right away. "It's not what you think," she said, voice trembling but trying to sound convincing. "Mark is just a friend. It's nothing serious, you're overreacting." She tried to brush it off, act like I was paranoid or jealous, but I wasn't born yesterday. I knew there was more, and I could see the guilt in her eyes. She was lying, clearly trying to cover her tracks. The worst part was the way she twisted everything. She claimed I was being controlling, that I didn't trust her, that I was financially abusive, whatever that even meant. She said I was making her feel trapped, like she had no freedom. Meanwhile, she was secretly funneling money into some secret account, probably to hide her affair expenses. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage was crumbling before my eyes. I was angry, devastated, and completely lost. How could she betray me like this? How could she lie so easily? I kept asking myself if I ever really knew her at all. That night, I couldn't sleep. All I could think about was how she'd been sneaking around behind my back, spending our savings on some guy she barely even liked, just for sex. I'd always been the one working hard, trying to provide for us, and now she's stealing from us to fund her betrayal. The pain of betrayal was one thing, but the financial damage was another. 250, zero gone, and I had no idea where my family's estate, worth over $1 million, had gone. I found out she transferred that into her name too, probably to cover her tracks or to prepare for her escape. I started digging deeper, trying to piece everything together. That's when I found out she'd already filed for divorce, claiming I was a terrible husband, accusing me of financial abuse. But the truth was, she was the one who'd been abusing my trust and our money. I felt betrayed not just emotionally, but on every level. She had lied to me, manipulated me, and now she was planning to walk away with everything: our money, our estate, our life. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to fight back, even if I didn't know exactly how yet. The whole situation felt like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. I kept asking myself how I'd let it get this far. How could she turn out to be the person I thought I knew? And most of all, how do I pick up the pieces and move forward from all this? After discovering the truth about Safair and her theft, I felt like I was spiraling into some kind of nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The betrayal cut deep, but what hit harder was the realization that she was planning to leave me, taking everything: our money, our estate, even the facade of our life together. It was like watching everything I'd worked for vanish into thin air, and I was left standing there, helpless, furious, and completely betrayed. That night I stayed up scrolling through every document I could find, trying to understand just how much damage she'd done. I pulled up our joint accounts, looked into the transfers, and then I started digging into her phone. I knew I was crossing some line, but I had to know everything. I found messages between her and Mark, flirty, suggestive texts, plans for secret meetups, and even some explicit photos. She'd been lying to me from the start. It was sickening. The next day, I decided I had to confront her again, but this time I was prepared. I sat her down at the breakfast table, laid out everything I'd found, and asked her outright, "Are you sleeping with Mark? Are you stealing from us?" Her face turned pale, then red with anger. She tried to deny everything, saying I was paranoid, that I was accusing her of sexually harassing her boss just because I was insecure. She insisted that Mark was just a friend, that I was overreacting, and that I was controlling her. But I knew better. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she avoided my gaze, the way she fidgeted. Her excuses made me furious. She threw out accusations of her own, claiming I was emotionally abusive, that I was a terrible husband because I didn't listen, because I questioned her. She said I was financially abusive because I'd asked her to be transparent about our money, which was true, but now I saw she'd been hiding a whole lot more. I told her I didn't believe her lies anymore. I told her I knew about the affair, about the theft, about the transfer of the estate. Her face twisted in anger and frustration. She yelled at me, calling me crazy, jealous, and paranoid. And then she stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. That moment was the worst. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I'd always been the one trying to keep everything together, working hard, paying the bills, trying to be the supportive husband. And now I was the one being betrayed, lied to, and pushed aside. I couldn't believe she'd lied about everything, even her love. I started crying, something I rarely do, and I felt a deep sadness that I couldn't shake. How did I get here? How did I let someone who seemed so perfect turn out to be such a liar? Over the next few days, I was a wreck. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't sleep, kept replaying everything in my head. I kept asking myself why she did it, why she betrayed me for some guy she barely even liked. I knew she was after money, after the estate, probably planning to take everything she could and run. And that's exactly what she was doing. I found out she'd already transferred her name into the estate, which was worth over $1.2 million. I couldn't believe it. She was taking everything I'd ever built with her, just to run off with Mark and some stolen cash. I felt so angry, so betrayed, yet part of me also just felt numb. I realized I couldn't stay passive anymore. I had to do something. I started talking to a lawyer, gathering all the evidence I could, bank statements, transfer records, her messages. I knew I couldn't just sit back and let her walk away with my life. She was planning to file for divorce, claiming I was the problem, painting me as some kind of financial abuser. But I knew the truth. I knew I had to fight for what was rightfully mine, for my family's legacy. The more I dug, the more I found out about her plans. She'd already hired a divorce lawyer, and I could see her preparing to take everything. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without a fight. I was angry, yes, but also determined. I had to protect what was left of my life, my money, and my dignity. The betrayal was almost too much to bear, but I knew I had to stay strong. The next step was clear: expose her lies, stop her from draining the estate further, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it yet, but I was done being the passive victim. It was time to fight back. The more I uncovered about plans, the clearer it became that she was playing a dangerous game. She was slick, manipulative, and utterly convinced she could walk away with everything without facing any consequences. I started reviewing every legal document I could find, every bank statement, every transfer. I hired a private investigator to track her movements, just to get ahead of her. I needed to know where she was, who she was talking to, and how far she was willing to go to cover her tracks. One afternoon, I got a tip from the PI. Had been seen at a high-end real estate office looking at properties. That was a red flag. She was planning to disappear, probably with Mark, probably to some luxury condo or vacation house she'd bought under a fake name. I couldn't let that happen. I knew I had to act fast. I contacted my lawyer, a sharp woman named Lisa who specialized in divorce and asset protection. I explained everything: her affair, the stolen money, the estate transfer, her new plans to run away. Lisa told me I had a strong case, especially with the evidence I'd gathered. She warned me that was likely to try to hide assets, transfer money, or do whatever it took to keep her new life intact. So I expedited legal filings to freeze the estate and any accounts she might try to move money into. Meanwhile, I started secretly recording her conversations. I installed a few discreet devices in the house, not to invade her privacy, but to gather proof. I knew she was lying, scheming, and trying to manipulate her way out of this mess. I needed hard evidence to fight her in court. I also reached out to a forensic accountant to scrutinize the financial transactions, to see if she'd hidden any other assets or income. As I pieced everything together, I felt a strange mixture of anger and relief. Anger because she'd betrayed me so thoroughly, and relief because I was finally taking control. I'd been silent, naive, and trusting for too long. Now I was fighting for my rights, for what was rightfully mine. I realized that was not the innocent victim she claimed to be. She was a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything to get her way. A few days later, I confronted her again. I told her I knew about her plans, about the property she was eyeing, about the transfer of the estate. I told her I had already filed legal motions to freeze her accounts and prevent her from selling or hiding any more assets. Her face twisted with rage and panic. She yelled at me, calling me controlling and paranoid, but I saw through her act. I knew she was scared and that she realized I was serious about stopping her. That's when she said something that hit me like a punch to the gut. She accused me of financial abuse and said I was trying to ruin her to keep her from having a fresh start. That was rich coming from her. She was the one who'd stolen hundreds of thousands, lied to my face, and tried to steal my family's estate. Her words didn't faze me anymore. I was beyond caring about her excuses. I was focused on the facts, on stopping her from walking away with everything. The next step was to serve her with legal notices. I wanted her to know I wasn't backing down. I also started preparing for a court battle, knowing she'd try to spin everything her way. I had to be ready for anything. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but I refused to let her win. I had to keep fighting for my rights and for what was rightfully mine, my family's estate, my future, and my dignity. Deep down, I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust, betrayal, and standing up for myself. Had played her hand, and now it was my turn. I wasn't going down without a fight. I promised myself I'd see this through to the end, no matter how ugly it got. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that some people will do anything to get what they want, especially when they think they can get away with it. And I wasn't going to let her. Not anymore. The legal process moved faster than I expected, and I started to see how deep was willing to go to cover her tracks. She tried to get ahead of everything, filing her own divorce petition claiming I was abusive, financially, emotionally, whatever she could spin into a weapon. It was almost laughable, but I knew better. I had the evidence and I had the law on my side. Still, her accusations stung even if I knew they were lies. It was hard not to feel angry or even hopeless sometimes, watching her manipulate the system. I kept pushing forward, gathering more proof of her schemes. I hired a forensic accountant and he uncovered some shocking things: more transfers, some hidden accounts, even some offshore holdings I never knew about. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. Every time I thought I had a handle on things, she'd surprise me with another lie or another move. It was exhausting, but I refused to give up. One day, I caught her in a lie that was so blatant I couldn't ignore it. She told me she was working late at her job, but I found out she'd been at Mark's place, staying overnight. I had a witness who saw her leaving his house early in the morning. I confronted her with the evidence, and her reaction was classic: denial, then anger, then tears. She claimed she was just confused, that it was a mistake, that she was sorry. Sorry doesn't cut it when she's been playing me for a fool all this time. That moment was a turning point. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, and I had to protect myself from further damage. I filed for a temporary restraining order, not to punish her, but to prevent her from doing any more harm. I also demanded full disclosure of all assets, including any offshore accounts or property she'd hidden. I knew she'd fight me, but I was ready for it. Meanwhile, she kept spinning her web of lies, claiming I was trying to control her, gaslighting her, and abusing her financially. Every time she opened her mouth, I saw how desperate she was to cling to her new life, no matter the cost. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. I had enough to prove her lies, and I was determined to use every bit of it in court. As the legal battle intensified, I started feeling a strange mix of anger and relief. Anger because she'd betrayed me so profoundly, and relief because I was finally taking control of my future. I realized I'd been a fool for trusting her blindly, but now I was fighting for what was rightfully mine, my family's estate, my dignity, my life. I knew she'd try to spin everything her way, but I had the truth on my side, and that was a powerful thing. One night I sat alone in my house, staring at the documents spread out on the table. I thought about everything I'd been through, her lies, her betrayal, her theft. I felt a deep pain, but also a strange sense of clarity. I couldn't undo what had happened, but I could control how I responded. I could stand up for myself and protect what was left. I realized that this wasn't just about money or property anymore. It was about finding the strength to move on, to rebuild, and to trust again someday. The upcoming court date was set, and I knew she'd do everything to try to win. But I also knew I had the truth, and I had my evidence. I was ready to face whatever came next. Because at the end of the day, I wasn't just fighting for the estate. I was fighting to reclaim my life from the wreckage she left behind. And I promised myself I wouldn't let her take any more from me. Not my money, not my dignity, and not my future. The court date finally arrived, and I was a mess of nerves and anger. I knew would bring her a game. More lies, more manipulation, any trick she could think of to get away with everything she'd stolen and betrayed. I had my evidence, my witnesses, and my lawyer, Lisa, who was sharp and relentless. But I also felt the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. This wasn't just a legal fight anymore, it was personal. She had played me for a fool, and now she was trying to spin everything into some kind of victimhood. I wasn't going to let her. The courtroom was tense from the moment we walked in. Sat there, looking bitchy and annoyed, trying to maintain her composure. She was still insisting she was the victim, claiming I was abusive, controlling, and that her affair with Mark was just a mistake she regretted. She spun her lies so convincingly that I almost believed her, almost. But I knew better. I had the proof. I had the recordings, the bank statements, the offshore account details, and the witness who saw her leaving Mark's house. When it was my turn to speak, I laid everything out clearly and calmly. I explained how she'd stolen from us, how she'd transferred the estate into her name, and how she'd been planning to run away with Mark and our money. I presented every document, every piece of evidence, and called my forensic accountant to testify about her hidden assets. I could see her squirming in her seat, her face flushing with rage and panic. She tried to object, to spin her stories, but Lisa was relentless. She countered every lie with facts and proof. Midway through, suddenly burst into tears, claiming she was so overwhelmed, that she felt trapped, and that she was sorry for everything. That was her classic tactic, playing the victim, crying, trying to sway the judge's opinion. But I wasn't falling for it. I knew her game. I looked her straight in the eyes and told the court about her lies, her manipulations, and how she'd betrayed not just me but our entire family. I told them about the theft, the offshore accounts, and her plans to disappear with millions. The judge listened carefully, asking questions and reviewing the evidence. It was clear she saw through facade. After hours of testimony, the judge made a ruling. She ordered to pay back the stolen money, freeze all remaining assets, and barred her from transferring any property or funds without approval. She also awarded me full control of the estate, including the transfer back into my name. His face contorted with fury and disbelief, but there was nothing she could do at that point. The law was on my side. As I left the courtroom, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with exhaustion. It was over, at least the legal fight. But the emotional scars still lingered. I knew I'd need time to heal from the betrayal, to trust again, to rebuild what she destroyed. But I also knew I'd won a crucial battle. I had fought for my rights, for my family's future, and I'd proven that even in the face of deception and betrayal, the truth and the law could prevail. In the days that followed, I started to piece my life back together. I took control of the estate, made sure all her accounts were closed or frozen, and began the process of emotional recovery. I reached out to friends and family, told them everything, and found some comfort in their support. I also started therapy because I realized I'd need help to process everything, to forgive, and to move on. Trust was shattered, but I was determined to rebuild my life, one step at a time. Looking back, I learned a lot from this nightmare. I learned that some people are capable of incredible betrayal when they think they can get away with it. I learned that the law can be a powerful tool, but only if you fight for it. And most importantly, I learned that even after the worst betrayals, you can find strength, strength you didn't know you had, to stand up and take control. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't be a victim again. I'll rebuild, and I'll do it without her. In the aftermath of everything, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on what I've been through. Honestly, I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where trust was shattered so completely, where someone I loved and trusted turned out to be so manipulative and selfish. It's a brutal lesson in human nature and the importance of protecting yourself, especially when the stakes are this high. I've come to realize that no matter how much you want to believe in the good in people, you have to stay vigilant, especially when it comes to money and those closest to you. The whole experience has changed me. I used to be someone who believed that honesty and loyalty were the foundation of any relationship, but now I see that some people will do anything to get what they want, even if it destroys everything they claim to care about. Still, I refuse to let bitterness consume me. I've learned to be more cautious, more aware of red flags, and more determined to protect what's mine. I've also learned that in the end, the most important thing is to stand up for yourself, no matter how hard it is. Losing my marriage was painful, no doubt about it. I loved once, and part of me still mourns what we lost. But I also understand now that her betrayal was a reflection of her character, not mine. I did everything I could to save what we had, but some people are just incapable of loyalty. I've accepted that I can't change her, only myself, and I'm choosing to focus on rebuilding my life from the ground up. I've taken steps to secure my finances and estate. I've rebuilt my savings, reorganized my assets, and made sure everything is transparent now. I've also started focusing on myself, my health, my passions, and my future. I've realized that I don't need someone like to define me or my happiness. Instead, I'll learn from this experience and grow stronger. I want to be more cautious, more aware, and more prepared for whatever comes next. If there's one thing I want others to take away from my story, it's this. Trust is fragile and betrayal can come from the most unexpected places. But you have to fight for yourself. You have to stand up, gather your evidence, and use the law if you have to. Don't let anyone manipulate or steal from you, because if you don't protect yourself, no one will. And above all, don't be afraid to start over. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to truly find yourself again. I'm still healing, still learning, but I'm moving forward, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever, to build a life that's truly mine.